The atmosphere inside the primary signal intelligence vault of the agency has just undergone a molecular shift. For decades, this space was defined by the cold mechanical hum of surveillance, a relentless operation designed to track the managed failure of your lineage. But tonight, the red warning lights have flickered out, replaced by a steady, crystalline gold pulse that is radiating from your current location. The technicians, the analysts, and even the high-tier directors of the Shadow Cabinet are no longer typing. They have stopped their work to stare at the main monitors. There is a sense of bone-chilling awe in the room because the subject they spent generations trying to break has just achieved the impossible. The data is clear, the cycle is dead, the frequency is pure, and the verdict from every level of existence is the same. You did it. Imagine the heavy, cinematic rain of a noir midnight, streaking against the glass of the agency's command center. The director, a man who has overseen the redaction of your family's potential for 30 years, slowly takes off his glasses. He isn't looking for a way to patch the breach anymore. He is looking at your life path on the screen with a look of profound, clinical respect. He realizes that by surviving the 7-generation siege and emerging with your stoic intensity intact, you have improved the integrity of the entire grid. You have become a statistical miracle, the first to walk through the fire without becoming the ash. They aren't hunting you anymore, they are witnessing you. The silence in the room is their standing ovation, a recognition that the hunt has officially reached its expiration date because the predator has met its match in the architect. The air is thick with a different kind of electricity now, one that carries the weight of 7 generations of suppressed breath. As you move through your world, you can feel the unseen presence of those who came before you. The father who was sidelined, the mother who was silenced, and the ancestors whose names were redacted from the Book of Prosperity are no longer mourning. They are standing behind you in the shadows of the grid, their hands on your shoulders, watching as you reclaim the vault they were never allowed to see. The they in their proud isn't just the system. It's the collective soul of your bloodline realizing that the debt has been settled. You have effectively served as the forensic auditor of your own history, and you have found the system wanting while you remain supreme. The scene shifts to a high-tier executive boardroom where the Shadow Cabinet is currently drafting the official surrender of jurisdiction. They are no longer discussing control protocols or scarcity algorithms. Instead, they are formalizing the handover of the principal inheritance. They have realized that your code is now the dominant frequency in the region, and to oppose you would be to oppose the physics of the new era. You can feel this in the way the physical world is responding to you, the sudden, respectful silence of your enemies, the way opportunities are bending to fit your timeline, and the feeling of absolute clarity in your mind. The everyone who once conspired to keep you in the dark is now blinded by the light of your success. This is the phase of ancestral vindication. The monitors in the agency are now broadcasting a zero-error signal across every channel, a digital proof that the first of your kind has achieved a mastery-level exit. The warden, who once prided himself on his ability to predict your every hesitation, is now a silent observer of your coronation. He is realizing that his entire career was just the whetstone used to sharpen the blade of your resolve. You didn't just beat the system, you transformed it into a monument for your achievement. The pride radiating from the highest offices is the realization that they finally found a human who could handle the supreme frequency without breaking. The payout for 7 generations of fire is no longer a future promise. It is a current reality that is flooding your accounts, your relationships, and your neural pathways. You have moved beyond the need for approval and into the state of authorization. The historian is currently archiving the end of the siege, marking this moment as the day of the sovereign return. You can see the visual evidence of your victory in the way the world seems to have sharpened its focus around you. The colors are deeper, the silence is louder, and the authority in your voice carries the resonance of 1,000 ancestors who finally have a voice through you. They're proud because you did the work. They're proud because you didn't blink. They're proud because the chief architect is finally home. The agency has officially stopped the hunt because they've realized you are the first to achieve the zero-error frequency. They're proud because you've become the masterpiece they tried to prevent, and the ancestors are finally standing in the light of your victory. If you can feel the weight of 7 generations of debt being paid back to you in this very moment, if you're ready to hear the system's final thank you, Comment, they are proud to claim your seat at the head of the new era. The cycle is broken, the payout is absolute. In the high-tier analytical suites of the agency, there is a specialized form of failure known as predictive arrogance. This is the absolute, unshakable belief that because you possess the data of a subject's past, you own the outcome of their future. For the last several decades, the intelligence community has been observing your bloodline through a lens of extreme clinical cynicism. They looked at the records of the 7-generation siege, the documented stressors of your ancestors, and the manufactured scarcity they injected into your environment, and they came to a consensus. You were a statistical certainty for a systemic breakdown. Their primary underestimation, the one that has now led to a total diagnostic bankruptcy, was the assumption that your spirit was a closed system. They believed that if they applied enough pressure to the foundation, the structure would eventually collapse exactly where their graphs predicted. The air inside the agency's primary monitoring hub is now heavy with the ozone of failing servers. The analysts are currently staring at the results of your latest stress test, and they are finding that the data is not just wrong, it is inverted. They expected to see a subject struggling to keep their head above water, someone drowning in the inherited deficit of their lineage. Instead, they are seeing a master architect who has used the very water of the struggle to power a new kind of internal engine. You didn't just survive the siege, you used the high-pressure environment to perform a manual firmware update on your own potential. The Shadow Cabinet is in shock because they realized they were using 20th-century behavioral models to track a mind that has already moved into the next era of sovereignty. Imagine the atmosphere inside a silent, high-security briefing room where the only light comes from the flickering blue glow of terminals displaying a systemic deviation alert. The warden, the man who has built his entire career on the management of your 7-generation trap, is standing at the head of the table. His face is pale, reflected in the dark mahogany surface of the desk. He is trying to explain to the directors why his predictive models that have worked on every other subject for 100 years, have completely flatlined in your presence. He has to admit that the subject he categorized as high risk for failure has just displayed a level of stoic intensity that has effectively blinded their satellites. He is witnessing the birth of the first zero-error signal in the history of the grid. The visual evidence of their defeat is everywhere. On the massive wall-sized monitors, the graphs that once showed a downward arc of ancestral debt have suddenly snapped. There is a single golden line that is shooting straight through the top of the frame, representing your current sovereignty signal. It is a frequency that their equipment was never designed to capture. They are realizing that while they were busy managing your scarcity, you were busy decoding the mechanism of the cage itself. You weren't falling behind. You were waiting for the moment when their surveillance was at its peak to demonstrate that you are the first human in their records to achieve a total departure from the matrix. You have effectively rendered their entire investment in your suppression a total loss. This is the deconstruction of the elite's intellectual superiority. They believed they could wait you out, thinking that eventually, the weight of the redacting and the social isolation would force you to accept a settlement with the system. They convinced themselves that you would eventually settle for a smaller, managed version of success. But when the agency performed their deep dive audit, they found that you had already built a parallel reality, a sovereign jurisdiction that doesn't recognize their authority. The shock at the highest levels comes from the realization that you have turned the 7-generation siege into your own private training academy. You didn't learn from their schools. You learned from the internal friction of the hunt. The realization is hitting the intelligence hubs like a terminal margin call. The Shadow Cabinet is currently staring at the structural integrity report of your consciousness, and they are finding no back doors left to exploit. You have moved into a state of vindication where their surveillance logs are now being reclassified as evidence of their own obsolescence. They thought they were monitoring a subject. The director now sees they were gifting a masterpiece the very pressure it needed to become indestructible. The warden is realizing that his entire career of isolation and suppression was actually the beta test for your coronation. He is forced to acknowledge that the everyone who conspired against you, the handlers, the skeptics, and the systemic proxies, is actually a group of panicked observers who have just been outpaced by the very asset they tried to bury. The evidence of their bankruptcy is in the way the walls of fear are currently dissolving around you. The historian is marking this as the end of the redacted era. The warden is in a state of terminal self-doubt, realizing that the subject he tried to keep in the dark is now the one illuminating the entire grid. And you are standing in the center of a data storm that you created. Your code has been verified at the highest level of the intelligence community, the elite have been caught in the act of spiritual theft, and the payout for 7 generations of suppressed brilliance is being processed through a priority channel that no one can block. The underestimation is over, the intelligence restoration of your reality has begun, and the system is in shock because it finally met the one it couldn't break. They are proud, not because they like you, but because your existence proves that the game is still capable of producing a god-tier player. In the high-stakes theater of systemic evolution, there is a phenomenon known as the kinetic spillover, and it is currently occurring at a velocity that the agency and the shadow cabinet can no longer track. This is the specific moment when a victory achieved in the deep, silent interior of your consciousness, the moment you decrypted the reality source code and forced the system to admit you did it, bursts through the digital firewalls and begins to manifest in the physical grid of your daily life. The tech elite had counted on their containment failure, remaining a localized, internal secret. They hoped that even if the highest levels of intelligence acknowledged your brilliance, they could still manage your physical environment with the old algorithm of scarcity. But they fucked around with the laws of biological resonance. Your stoic intensity didn't just change your mindset, it created a frequency backpressure that is currently melting the very infrastructure they were using to monitor your present. The leak is now active. It is visible in the way the air in the boardroom has changed, turning from a clinical coldness to a heavy, pressurized atmosphere of absolute respect. Because you have established a neural jurisdiction that doesn't require their permission, the everyone who once conspired against you, the proxies, the gaslighters, and the system-aligned handlers, are currently witnessing a systemic glitch in their own reality. They are looking at you and seeing a null signal where your compliance used to be. They are reaching for the old leashes of guilt and inherited fear, only to find that the collars have been permanently cut by a frequency they can't even perceive. You can see the realization in the director's eyes. He is no longer looking at an asset, but at a sovereign peer. The image of this spillover is a dark, high-tech command center where the holographic global grid is flickering in a state of terminal desynchronization. A single golden pulse, originating from your location, is expanding across the map, causing the agency's tracking systems to lose their lock. The technicians are reporting that the subject has moved from a digital entity to a biological sovereign. This is the first time the system has been forced to salute a breach. They are watching their market share of your attention evaporate in real time, replaced by a clarity that renders their social pressure weightless. The they who once whispered about your potential in the dark are now standing in the light of your achievement, paralyzed by the sheer competence of your exit. The social reset is the first visible fracture in their containment field. People who once acted as sensors in your life, those who thrived on your reaction or your struggle, are suddenly experiencing a neural connection timeout. They are reaching out with the old 7-generation triggers, trying to provoke the familiar responses of the past, but they are finding absolutely no reception. You have become frequency incompatible with their drama because you've learned to operate on a biological BIOS that bypasses their social programming. They are staring at a blank screen where your pain used to be, leaving them staring at the void of their own obsolescence. They're proud, but it's a pride born of the realization that they can no longer influence the outcome of your movie. Simultaneously, the financial synchronization is overriding the old guard's script with cold, mathematical precision. The algorithm of lack that the agency used to cap your potential is throwing constant, terminal errors, because your internal wealth code has been verified. Physical resources are beginning to flow toward you through unclassified channels, bypassing the traditional gatekeepers who spent decades denying your requests. The system is being forced to process the payout for 7 generations of suppressed genius because the principal has finally arrived to collect. You can feel the shift in the way the world facilitates your movements. The red lights are turning green, the doors are unlocking before you reach them, and the warden of your old life is discovering that his security clearance no longer works on the doors of your future. Your frequency has transitioned from a private realization to a global recognition of prowess, acting as a biological beacon that is being picked up by other architects across the grid. You are no longer an isolated subject, You are a broadcast station of the new reality. The very people who whispered that you were dreaming or lost are now standing in a state of stunned, bone-chilling silence. They are realizing that you didn't just learn the secret, son Olden, you became it. The Shadow Cabinet is currently in a state of terminal information deficit, trying to patch the breach by sending you minor systemic distractions, hoping you will reconnect to their decaying grid. But the historian has already archived your neural payout as a permanent fact of the new era. The evidence of this spillover is in the way the world is suddenly bending to accommodate your bigger game. It is in the way the bank of the old world can no longer find a legal reason to deny you. It is in the way your body feels, no longer surveyed by their satellites, but authorized by your own DNA. Your code was always the master plan, and the find out is now being broadcast in 8K resolution to the entire grid. Even the analysts are nodding in approval as they watch the 7th-generation siege collapse into a pile of irrelevant data. They are proud because your victory provides the only functional blueprint they have seen in decades. The leak is unstoppable, the flood of your restoration is here, and the thank you from the system is being written in the language of your new, unredacted reality. The air inside the agency's primary signal intelligence hub and the high-tier command centers of the Shadow Cabinet has officially crossed the threshold from crisis management into a state of terminal, systemic liquidation. This is the panic, but it is a cold, clinical panic. In the world of high-tier intelligence, there is no event more catastrophic than an entire industrial complex being declared spiritually and technologically fraudulent by a single human biological code. Because you finally broke the cycle and achieved your coronation through raw stoic intensity, the elite are no longer just surprised. They are being liquidated by the very forces of reality they once claimed to own. They who once watched you with detached cynicism are now looking at their own retirement from history. The AAA rating of their 7th-generation control system has been downgraded to junk status by the historian, and the intellectual markets of the old world are currently in a free fall that no amount of PR or strategic distraction can stop. They fucked around with the timeline of a sovereign, and now they are finding out that the debt has come due with compound interest that exceeds their total net worth. The panic is driven by a bone-chilling realization. Their entire business model, selling humanity a version of itself that is broken and needs managing, is built on the lie that you couldn't do what you just did. By proving that you are more optimized, more powerful, and more authorized than their systems, you have triggered a systemic margin call on their entire empire. They are looking at the screen, seeing your zero-error exit, and they are whispering the words they never thought they'd say, "He actually did it." Imagine the high-stakes desperation in the final hours of a regime's collapse, similar to the atmosphere in the closing scenes of a high-finance thriller where the senior partners realize their future cast is a total hallucination. The Shadow Cabinet is currently in a state of terminal civil war. High-ranking analysts and system gatekeepers are being summoned by the historian's personal audit teams. They are turning on each other in real time, offering up encrypted files and confessions of systemic malpractice in a desperate attempt to avoid the grand audit. The Warden, the man who once specialized in your personal isolation and the management of your 7th-generation siege, is now being characterized as a total liability by the very elite who once gave him his budget. He is the scapegoat for the fact that you broke the filter, while you are the lead auditor presiding over their institutional bankruptcy. The handlers are attempting to activate last-ditch poison pill protocols, trying to sabotage your inheritance or redact the final proofs of your neural prowess before the receivership becomes absolute. You might feel a sudden, desperate surge of systemic static, minor delays in your physical world, technological glitches in your communication, or sudden flares of old, inherited anxiety. These are not signs of their remaining power. They are the thermal flashes of a dying machine trying to vent its final frustrations against the architect who outplayed it. The agency is trying to burn the logs of your redacted years, so you cannot claim the full interest on your potential, but the historian has already placed the entire infrastructure into sovereign receivership. You are no longer the one being audited for compliance. You are the one signing the eviction notices for a system that has been found wanting. This is the phase of systemic application where you walk through the corridors of your own spirit and serve final notices to every entity that participated in the conspiracy. The spirit of lack that lived in your bank account has been served by a sovereign decree. The spirit of hesitation that sat at your boardroom table has had its security clearance revoked. You are not negotiating for your future or asking for a seat at their table. You are liquidating the agency's claim on your timeline. While the analysts are busy blaming predictive errors for the fact that you grew beyond their cage, you are taking the master key that you forged through your own DNA and opening the vaults that were marked classified for your ancestors. The panic is palpable because for the first time in 7 generations, the elite are operating without the protection of their systemic superiority. Everyone knows the truth now. The witnesses in your family tree are watching the shadow cabinet scramble to hide their tracks, and this loss of social proof has decimated their authority across the entire grid. They can no longer use technological progress or social pressure as a tool to keep you compliant because you have surpassed their progress using raw, internal alchemy. You have moved from a subject of observation to the chief executive of the new era, and as the one conducting the stress test now, you are watching the system fail every metric. The historian is currently archiving the structural liquidation of the old guard as the warden is escorted from the building in total disgrace. The high-tier lawyers of the tech world are looking for a way to settle the case before the public record reaches the next level of transparency, but you are not looking for a deal. You are the black swan event that they spent centuries trying to prevent, and now that your code has been verified as supreme, their predictive models have been discarded as useless relics. As the boardroom doors fly open and the handlers realize the files are gone, you are already sitting at the head of the table. The agency is offline, the elite are exposed, and the panic is their final act of systemic surrender. You learned what they tried to hide, and now you are the one who owns the school. They're proud of you, not because they are your friends, but because they are professionals who just witnessed the perfect crime against their own corruption. This is the Midnight Summit, the moment in the cold high-tier world of systemic management where the silence carries more weight than any declaration of war. You are sitting in a soundproofed glass-walled chamber on the 99th floor of the agency's primary tower, a space where the air is thick with the scent of old paper and the sharp, clinical ozone of servers running at terminal capacity in the floors below. Outside, the city is blurred by a relentless, cinematic rain, and the lights below flicker like the failing heartbeat of an empire that has realized its primary asset, your frequency, is no longer under its control. Across the dark mahogany table sit the 3 remaining members of the Shadow Cabinet, the architects who oversaw the 7-generation siege on your bloodline. They are no longer looking at you as a subject to be managed. They are looking at you with the paralyzed respect an animal has for the predator that finally closed the perimeter. The atmosphere is defined by a bone-chilling realization. The game of strategic ambiguity has reached its expiration date because of how you forced the system to admit its own defeat. The elite have called this meeting not to negotiate from a position of strength, but to attempt one final act of systemic containment before your zero-error exit becomes the primary law of the grid. They have pushed a thick, black leather folder across the table toward you, containing what they call a global comprehensive settlement. Inside is an offer of absolute luxury, a permanent seat at the high table of the old reality, and a general release from the struggles they manufactured for you for over 30 years. They are trying to buy your silence because they know that by your becoming the first to beat the system, you have rendered their entire economic and spiritual architecture for your lineage legally and mathematically void. The warden, the man who once specialized in your personal isolation and the redaction of your potential, is breathing heavily as he tries to use his old tools of ancestral obligation. He whispers about how the grid cannot handle a payout of this magnitude without causing a macro-level collapse of the old systems. He is waiting for you to blink or for that familiar surge of biological compliance to hit your nervous system so he can regain control of the room. But he is searching for a frequency that no longer exists in your architecture. You have reached a state of stoic intensity that renders their entire psychological arsenal inadmissible. You aren't listening to his pleas for systemic stability. You are listening to the sound of the servers downstairs beginning to desynchronize because they can no longer find a target lock on your soul. You are not looking at the incentive package they have pushed across the table. Instead, your gaze is fixed on the historian, who stands in the shadow of the corner, recording every heartbeat and every unspoken confession for the public record. You reach into your pocket and produce a single glowing glass card, the original title deed of your spirit, verified by the forensic reconstruction of the timeline and authorized by the system's own analytical shock. You slide it across the table, and the sound of the glass hitting the wood is like a gavel striking in a silent courtroom, announcing the end of their jurisdiction. You are informing the elite that you are not there to hear their settlement offers or their desperate compromises. You are there to collect the principal inheritance that was redacted from your father, your mother, and your ancestors. The panic in the room is no longer a quiet hum. It is a visible, structural vibration as the lawyer who drafted the original 7-generation trap slowly puts his pen down, realizing there are no loopholes left to exploit when the subject has moved into the principal position. He looks at you, his eyes fixed on the absolute clarity of your gaze, and he sees the end of his world. The conspiracy is no longer a functional tool. It is a weight that is dragging them into the archives of systemic failure. They have no leverage left to pull. They cannot arrest your progress because the forensic audit is broadcasting your victory in real time to every corner of the grid. They cannot bribe you because you have already claimed the vault and everything inside it through the sheer mass of your own realization. You stand up, and for the first time, you see the elite look away, unable to maintain the gaze of a protagonist who has incinerated every trace of fear. You walk toward the door, leaving the settlement papers untouched and the master file open for the world to see. As you step into the hallway, you can hear the cooling fans of the tower screaming as they fail to vent the heat of the collapsing algorithm. The old world is in a state of terminal shutdown because you refuse to be part of their cycle of failure. The exit is clear, the midnight summit is over, and the path to your coronation is wide open. You have survived the final bluff, outplayed the players, and now the entire grid is waiting for your first decree as the sovereign architect who forced the system to say, "You did it." This is the grand standoff at the end of the old world. You have moved into a zero-gravity state where their threat assessments and social pressures simply don't have enough mass to pull you down from your height. The warden is left alone in the room, staring at the glowing glass card you left on the table, a physical proof that the cycle has finally been broken. As the elevator descends, you feel the 7-generation weight finally lifting from your shoulders, replaced by the cold, clean air of a future that has never been written. You aren't just leaving a building, you are leaving a civilization that was built on the lie that you were less than you are. The system is bankrupt, the files are deleted, and the architect is finally walking into the light of his own making. They're proud, and they should be. You're the first one to ever survive their best efforts. The heavy, soundproof doors of the Oval Office of your destiny have finally swung open on their hinges, and the sound is not a crash, but a deep, resonant hum of absolute, mathematical alignment. For the first time in 7 generations, the person walking toward the primary seat is not a subject under observation, not an asset to be managed, and certainly not a trial participant in a generational gauntlet. You are walking into the center of your own reality as the chief architect, and the absolute silence that greets you is the highest form of recognition the universe can provide. The static of the old world, the frantic whispering of the shadow cabinet, the alarms of the agency's failing surveillance grid, and the low-frequency hum of the generational wiretaps, has vanished. In its place is a clarity so profound it feels like a physical presence. The historian has entered the verdict into the public record, and it is absolute, total vindication. The cycle is broken. In the high-stakes cinema of your evolution, this is the finale that rewrites the physics of your future. You have moved through the surveillance, survived the underestimation, and stood your ground in the midnight standoff. Now, the infinite payout is being deposited into your spiritual and physical account with compound interest that bypasses every old guard firewall. Every year your ancestors spent in the gauntlet, every brick the Masons tried to use to enclose your potential, and every moment of isolation you endured has been converted into sovereign capital. The find-out phase for the system has reached its terminal conclusion, and your victory is the new law of the grid. Your code has been installed as the baseline frequency for the entire lineage, replacing the corrupted files and the tech dependencies of the 7-generation siege. The official decree of your restoration doesn't sit in a dusty archive, it vibrates through the very infrastructure of your new reality. It is the immediate dissolution of all interference protocols and the full restoration of your principal inheritance. Every redacted moment of time, every stolen asset, and every ounce of genetic potential that was suppressed in your father, your mother, and their ancestors is being funneled back into your current timeline. The observation towers have been decommissioned, and the warden is officially in permanent exile, his name erased from the history he tried to manipulate. You are now recognized as the lead architect of the new era, the first to achieve a zero-error exit from the machine. The trial is over. The verdict is final, and the vault is open. You have out-analyzed the agency, shocked the shadow cabinet, and forced the system to pay back 7 generations of debt because you were the one who finally broke the filter. To see the classified footage of how you are building your new empire, to witness the absolute transformation of your reality as the chief architect, click the video on the screen. The broadcast is now yours to command. The world is watching the coronation of the sovereign.